I'm going to take 10 or 12 minutes, and I'm going to outline for you some of this, just to set the stage. First of all, the seriousness of this epidemic, this outbreak. Now, as you all know, the history of it started with a single case in Guinea, was under the radar screen literally for a few months until March, when in earnest the three borders of Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia made for what I have spoken about and written about as the perfect storm of so many reasons why, in fact, we have an explosive epidemic that is more out of control than anything in the history of this particular microbe, this virus, when it was first discovered in 1976. And again, people don't, maybe not everyone appreciates that since 1976, we've had about 24 outbreaks for a total of about 2,400 people infected and 1,200 people dead. So if you look at the 18,000 infections and 7,000 to 8,000 deaths now, which is likely somewhat of a modest undercount, this pandemic in this area, or epidemic when one thinks of the Africa in general, has really been extraordinary in that it's more than anything that we have seen combined over that period of time. Now, the efforts that have contained these other outbreaks in the past have been a variety of things that are essentially fundamental: good infrastructure, good response, good ability to identify, isolate, contact trace, and protect healthcare workers. This was not easy, but it was relatively easy when one thinks in terms of the fact that you have very few situations of traveling back and forth. If you look at the original outbreaks that took place in Zaire and in Sudan, the Kikwik outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they were all ultimately controlled. So now we have something that we are making progress, because if one looks at Liberia with the insertion of resources from a variety of governments, the United States has been very heavily involved in Liberia, the UK in Sierra Leone, but there have been a variety of agencies involved that have put resources in, things like safe burials, etc. I know there is, but that didn't happen. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is where it started. So can I start now, Steve?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it started here, and then these things happened in May, and that's when people were starting to get a little bit concerned. In July, things really got bad, and then in September and October, at least my life changed and turned into an intern in medicine again, which translates into getting no sleep when you're involved in a very intense situation. Then November, and then December, and here's what we're seeing actually right now with the Sierra Leone cases essentially overtaking considerably the cases in Liberia. Now, I mentioned the public health responses that were actually involved in keeping these things in the infected countries under control. Everything really without looking at things like Ebola-specific therapeutics, and certainly not a vaccine. Education, hygienic practices, contact tracing, safe burials, aggressive supported care. I mentioned the United States getting involved with the construction of Ebola treatment units, the Department of Defense playing a major role when the president called in the Department of Defense and brought in the ability to do the engineering, command and control, and the setup of Ebola treatment units became a very, very important. The CDC did an unprecedented job together with USAID in the number of people that they have now deployed to this area. So it's been an extraordinary effort. However, we're asking the question now, and this is what I want to focus my few minutes on, in that will we need interventions in the form of vaccines and therapeutics for the current outbreak, which is entirely possible, because until you completely snuff out every case in West Africa, as we know about Ebola, until all the embers are out, there's always a threat of an outbreak. And we've seen that, and we know it can happen. So that's very important. So the two things about vaccine that I want to throw out for discussion is that, do we need a vaccine to put down this epidemic? And even if we don't get one in time, or we don't prove that it's effective, will we need it? And I say yes, for the inevitable outbreaks that are occurring. Now, why am I telling the audience this? Is because it's going to be very important to know whether the vaccine works. Because the thing you don't want to do is to deploy a vaccine that might be harmful or that you may assume works, and then for the next epidemic, you have a problem. And that's going to be the attention that I hope we get a chance to discuss about the design of a vaccine trial. So having said that, when one thinks of vaccines that are either already in phase 1, getting ready to go to phase 2, 3, there are 2 of them. Another booster now with the MVA getting involved would make it, I would say, 2.5 or 3. There's another 3 that you're going to hear about, not that they're any less in quality, because we don't really know about quality until you test. But temporally, they have not yet gone into phase 1 trial. And I want people to understand that, because I often get asked, is this the prioritization of vaccines? Yes and no. Prioritization and getting it into an advanced trial, but not necessarily a predictive value of whether or not it is going to be better, which is why at a meeting we had at the NIH just the other day, Monsef himself argued strongly for many candidates to be in play at the same time. So let's focus very briefly on the 2 that are most advanced temporally, and that is the first, what we're calling the NIAID GSK vaccine, which is a chimp adeno 3 vector into which was inserted the gene of the glycoprotein. This has gone into phase 1 trials, but chimpanzee studies have indicated a very favorable protection using this particular candidate. That's good news. Also, phase 1 was relatively uneventful. We had individuals, 20 individuals at the NIH. We did it right there at the NIH. It was uneventful. It's been also tested in a monovalent form. We did a bivalent in the UK, and will be set up to be also tested in Africa, in Mali and other African countries. This is the New England Journal of Medicine paper that came out in just literally a couple of weeks ago about the phase 1 trial, and we're now setting up for testing again an advanced trial using this. The other candidate is the VSV, same principle. The vector is a vesicular stomatitis virus into which has been inserted the Ebola glycoprotein gene. Phase 1 trials fully enrolled. This again in collaboration with the Department of Defense. We're doing it at the NIH. Others are doing it from the Walter Reed Army Medical Institute by the Department of Defense, the United States Army. Again, now in collaboration also with Merck, and you'll be hearing more about that from Julie. The New Link company is the company that's involved. It originated in the Public Health Agency of Canada. As I mentioned, DOD together with NIAID, and the phase 1 trials are enrolled. Merck is involved. Now, you may have heard that the trial was put on hold because of an arthritis. People get confused about that. There were 4 individuals that had what was clear inflammation. That doesn't mean it's the end of the vaccine by any means. Arthralgias, myalgias are very common. We saw it in a significant proportion of people when you give a live virus vaccine. In fact, you don't even have to give a live virus vaccine, and you could see it in individuals. The question is, what is that going to mean? And that's why you have phase 1 trials, so you can investigate that pretty easily. The proposed forward paths are 2, and again, this has been in very close collaboration with the Liberian health officials, is the plan of a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in Liberia and a stepped wedge trial in Sierra Leone, with at least 2 in Liberia, the VSV and the chimp adeno, and possibly 1 or maybe 2 in Sierra Leone. We're working with the CDC now to decide about that. The pipeline of therapeutics, again, I want people to really appreciate that none of these have been shown to be effective. They've been given on compassionate use, and we do not know if any of them work. Mechanistically, you can figure out a way that they may work or not, but you're never going to know whether they work. And I also might make a comment that I think we'll get the chance to discuss. The distribution in a trial in which not everybody gets a particular intervention is different when you're dealing with a vaccine that you're giving to an absolutely healthy person compared to a therapeutic when you're giving it to someone who may be drastically ill. So when you think about the design of trials, that's the reason why the discussion of that is a bit different. Very quickly, ZMapp, you've heard about it. It's been given to several people on compassionate use. It's an antibody cocktail of 3 anti-glycoprotein antibodies that has been shown to protect monkeys. Small interfering RNA, the TKM Ebola, there are phase 1 trials that are ongoing. BCX4430, which is a nucleoside analog, which protect monkeys against Ebola, also in a phase 1 trial. Brincidofovir, which is a polymerase inhibitor, developed for other viruses, but shown to have some activity against Ebola, and has now been used with Marburg, but not yet with Ebola. And favipiravir, which is an RNA polymerase inhibitor, which has broad antiviral usage. It protects mice. It has not yet gone into a non-human primate. The reason I show you this, you can argue that these have potential, but remember, despite the fact that they are either given in compassionate use and or in a phase 1 trial, doesn't mean they work. And the critical issue is to balance the need for a therapeutic with a desperately ill person and the need to show that it actually works and that you don't hurt them. The other is convalescent plasma. First trials have been kicked off just a couple of days ago in Guinea and Sierra Leone and Liberia, which is going to be determining whether the antibodies in a person's plasma who is recovered will be protective. We have put together with the people in Emory as well as in Nebraska an adaptive trial design to take a look at a couple of these therapeutics with the control arm being an enhanced care. In other words, intensive intravenous replenishment and fluid and electrolyte balance. So it isn't a placebo because it's different than a situation in which you're giving a vaccine.